everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Crypto City. There's a lot going on in the world right now. It's a really stressful time, no matter what your beliefs, no matter what your politics, it doesn't matter. It's just a very stressful time all the way around. And so I thought it would be a great idea to bring on somebody who is a lot of positivity this week so that we could kind of, change the tides a little bit. This person has been in the metaverse for quite a long time and has been doing a lot of things to try and help people get through life. He's a life coach and, he's actually just wanting to help build community and help people who are going through difficult times and just to be a friend to those who are not going through difficult times. And so, I thought maybe this week we would change our theme has been application, and it's been mostly, things that we've learned in the metaverse and, programs and different ways to build businesses here in the metaverse. But I thought maybe some lifestyle within the metaverse would be a little bit of a different change and kind of a very positive one for this week. So I would like you all to welcome to the stage MetaCoach. MetaCoach, please join us.
Hello, everybody.
Hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead and grab a seat.
I might look a little different today, but I'm here.
And we are glad that you are here. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Cool. Glad to be here.
We were just saying how there's a lot going on right now in the world that's a little bit crazy, a little chaotic, and it might be wearing on a lot of people. And, there's always room, even in the best of days, for positivity in our life. So you have been doing this for quite a while, and you're a life coach, but also you've been a good community coach for everyone. So I'd like you to kind of share with everyone your professional background and your life coaching and your daily work as well.
Okay. Well, in real life, I am a behavioral life coach, and I've been doing this life coaching business for on my own, as my own practice for close to 10 years, but I did it corporately for almost 15 years as a sales and leadership development coach. And what I found that every time I would deal with an executive that had an issue, because I was actually a performance coach, helping people improve in their jobs. And what I would always find that the performance issue was always connected to some other issue outside of work. So I began to kind of target that. And my company caught wind that I was able to do that, helping people solve personal problems, which greatly improved their professional. So my work just kind of gravitated into that, to where my company even gave me the title of behavioral development coach for the corporation. And so that's how I got started in this business before I started my own private practice.
That's very interesting. And sometimes people's personalities and their characteristics actually steer them into their direction in their career. So I love to hear that stories like that. Now, you've been here in the metaverse and in immersive spaces for a long time. What originally brought you into the metaverse?
COVID lockdown.
Okay. Like a lot of us.
I came into the metaverse, and the first time I came in, I think I went into a rec room and I saw that was all kids. And then I saw this thing that said Alt Space. I said, that looks interesting. So I decided to go in there, and I ended up at a campfire. And when I was in there, people were flying around in airplanes and blowing bubbles and sticky tape. And I go, this is just for a bunch of kids. So I just put the headset down for about 4 months. And then I picked it up again one day, and I came in and I saw people flying out, and I asked this one person next to me, I said, how are people doing that? And she explained to me how people were flying around. And she said, you must be brand new. I said, yep. And so she basically began to give me an orientation to alt space and the metaverse. And I began to look at what people were doing, and I saw that there was an opportunity to do some training and development. But I didn't know how to approach it. So this person helped me figure out the pathway in. And my first session that I taught was dealing with emotional intelligence for business success, because I was still kind of in that business mindset. And my first session was only going to be, like a 6-week session. I was going to do an hour a day, one day a week. It ended up lasting 10 weeks, and I ended up having almost a full capacity at each of my sessions in there.
Wow.
And so as people began to move out of COVID lockdown, I saw that people were struggling really hard and making a transition. So I developed a course called Rut to Rhythm. And it was basically a 6-step course on how to get out of the rut that you're in, how to realize your potential or revive your dreams, and how to move forward, but also how to stay out of the rut, how to recognize the rut, and how to keep going. And that was going to be a 4 to 6 week, and that ended up being 10 weeks.
That's amazing.
So I said, well, there's a real need in here for this. And so I began to develop from there, and then Altspace closed.
Mm.
Now, the interesting thing about the Altspace closure was that I didn't have some of the same emotional ties that people had in there. So when people were coming to me asking me, what do I do? I didn't quite get it, that the emotional ties that people had in there, the relationships, because, I came in toward the latter part of Altspace. But what made me kind of blind to what people were feeling, I'm prior military, and I was used to leaving one location, going to the next. I was used to, doing away with these relationships or minimizing these relationships while preparing to build new relationships and new locations. So my mindset was, okay, this is closing. What's next? Mm-hmm. But I ran across a lot of people who couldn't understand what was next. It was like this was the end all be all. And so once I realized that I was not able to effectively coach people in the transition because of my mindset, it caused me to go back and rethink and relook at what I'm doing. And then I was able to really help people with the change. And so that kind of cemented my role in here is that.
So, there's definitely a different perspective on business coaching versus behavioral and emotional coaching. And so you came in initially, you said during COVID. So did you see like a shift in people's personality? I mean, you didn't know the people prior to that, but you can tell people's demeanors are a little bit different when they're dealing with the stresses that are going on in the real world. And they're coming into the metaverse sometimes as an escape. And other times they're coming into, socialize and commiserate with people because they're feeling isolated in their homes during the pandemic. Did you find that influenced you at all to kind of feel more in tune to people, or did your military, background really kind of dictate that you were staying structured on the business?
No, that seeing the emotions and seeing what people were going through, really opened my eyes to what people were really experiencing. Because what I realized, there were people who came into the metaverse who had totally lost or separated from the physical world because they may not have been working. They may have been distant from family or had medical situations at home that prevented them from really getting out and reconnecting with the real world again. And so I began to see people really pull in, build community, build connection. And those relationships were just as solid as any physical relationship, and in some cases, even more. Mm-hmm. And because I felt people found that they were able to communicate a little better, reveal, they could control what they could reveal about themselves. And I think that was the big thing, because in the physical world, people see, people hear and connect. But in here, you were able to say, this is how I'm going to measure myself. And some people over measured, some people under measured, and there was a constant adjustment to who they really were. And that's what I saw in here.
So now there's a lot of different things that go on in the metaverse. There's a lot of community. There's a lot of people collaborating and working together. But you also have, sometimes there are people who come in and there's cyberbullying. There's, people who come in and cause drama. And there is a fair amount of that, unfortunately. Part of that is because human nature. Part of it is because some people just don't understand that when you have the headset on and you are in here as an avatar, you're still a person on the inside. Sorry, everyone. It's been a little bit glitchy tonight in here in VR chat. Hopefully he'll just pop right back in. we were saying, okay, so that there's a lot of, sometimes there's a lot of negative space in here as well. So it's important to focus on the positive. And it's nice that you've been able to put platforms together where you could help people feel better,
Yes.
help people come and talk about even their grievances in a more controlled environment where you can kind of steer them from the negative headspace to a positive one. Do you think that, in today's climate with all of the things going on, that this is something that is very relevant, and there are people who are being emotionally affected by things that are going on, coming in here looking for a safe space?
Oh, by all means. And I see you have the my flyers up for when I did the emotional intelligence and trauma and things like that, going from victim to victor. I did a lot of things like that. And the cyberbullying, what was interesting about those presentations, I did them in spatial. And on average, I would have people from like 14 different countries that were coming to hear these things. And so I would have somebody from like South Africa or Japan or Ireland, and they would say, we're dealing with this same thing. We're dealing with cyberbullying. We're dealing with this trauma and drama. Found that people found it easier to come in here and to deal with those things.
Sometimes it's nice when you are in a group of people that you feel, are less threatening, whether it's because of the avatar or it's because you just feel that it's a safer space than the people that you deal with on a day-to-day in the real world. So
Exactly.
I appreciate the fact that you take the time to make these groups for people to come to. So let me ask you a question. You mentioned Altspace and the sunsetting of Altspace and how traumatic that was for a lot of people who didn't have much else going on except the community that they grew into become family. And so for them, it was, all of us felt the pain. I was part of Altspace too. We all missed it. We all felt the loss that it impacted. But I think there were some people that was literally their day to day. That was what they had. And so that was very traumatic. Now we have new news about Meta Horizon sunsetting their work in the VR realm and shifting it over to mobile. It's not completely gone yet, but you already hear people's responses. You hear the reactions. And do you feel like, this is going to be a time for some people where they detach or they maybe need a group to go to?
I'm seeing both sides of that. I'm seeing people who are finally just saying, what, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting jerked around, and they're leaving. But I also see a plus side to this, because when I looked at what happened with Altspace, people went elsewhere and built new communities. And I kind of see that's going to happen with Horizon. I think people are going to go and build new communities. So I don't see it as a total negative. I see it as a negative in the fact that we've embraced this and we've gotten used to it. But I think people are learning you just can't hold on so tight to something that you have no control over.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
So I encourage people to take what you have gained and take it to the next place.
Move forward with it. Yeah. And I think that for those of us who went through it with Altspace, we have a little bit different perspective because we oh, here we go again. Time to move forward, And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but this is a piece of your life. It should not be 100% of your life. So everything should work seamlessly together, So let's talk about your podcast, because you did this series here. You've done other ones, and you're using podcasting as a tool for impact. So, you host Coached, Talks with Coach. You have the Military Activity Center. Why are you choosing podcasts as your vehicle?
Well, the reason I chose the podcast because in my Coach talk show, it's a dialogue. There's a lot of back and forth, and and I'm typically the only person on stage at Coached. I do the whole show myself. I very seldom do I ever have a guest come on Coached. And, like I said, maybe once or twice a year. But, the rest of the time it's me either coaching the audience or having somebody come on stage for one-on-one coaching. And I dealt with the podcast because I wanted the podcast to be a place to where I could actually have a guest on stage, and I was able to have that person share or dialogue, some insight with me. And the first show that I did, I dealt with manhood. And I had a panel of 4 guys, and I asked them 3 questions. What is your understanding of manhood? What does manhood mean to you? I said, I don't want a commercial definition. I want your definition. And I want you to dig deep for it. So the 4 guys shared that. Then I asked them the next question: what about your upbringing that brought you to this point to make you see and believe this way? And the last question says, if you could go back and talk to your younger self at 10 years old, what would you say to that person about being a man based on what you've learned? And it became a very, very intense, but also deeply moving conversation, because these guys had to dig deep and they began to deal with some personal childhood trauma, things that caused them to believe and think this way. And so by doing it that podcast way, it wasn't a thing where the audience was popping in and asking questions. These guys were able to get down and get real about who they were. And that's why I chose that format. And I did the same thing with a panel of women, and those same questions. And there were people in the audience that were weeping because they were hearing their story on stage. And so as opposed to asking questions, they were able to listen and hear the depth of it. And I think the best show I did so far was one on parents that had children with special needs. And it was an international panel. I had a parent from South Africa, one from Australia, one from the UK, and one from the US. And they all had special needs children. And they had to share, what it was. We went from everything like, what is the medical support? What kind of community support do you have? How do you deal with those things? Recognizing there were people in the audience that were dealing with the same thing, and they didn't know where to go for those answers. So that's why I chose the podcast format for those kind of things, so people could hear the stories, but then be able to think internally within themselves what they were hearing.
So I love hearing that, and because I believe that in this community that there's so much similarity that people don't realize. Everybody's got their own demons and their own battles that they're going through day to day, but there's a lot of people who you come in contact with that you share a lot more than people realize. And hearing things like that, and somebody who is battling something quietly hears that they're not alone anymore, and that can be all the difference in their day to day, knowing that there might be someone, hey, can we talk for a second? I'm going through the same thing. And that's a wonderful tool that you're using there. I love that. So, do you find that positive content reaches people as effectively as drama-based content? Because I feel like, you have a show, a podcast show or a talk show, and you pull up some sort of real controversial topic and the audience is flooded. But you have something where you're talking about something serious or something wholesome or even something that's very heartbreaking, and you've got, 5 people in the audience. How does that work,
What I believe and feel that whoever needs to hear what's being said are going to be there. So I never really get caught up in the numbers, because I've been doing coach. This is 4 years now going into coach.
Congratulations.
And for the most part, coach has been maxed out these 4 years. Now, there have been those slow times when I have 2 or 3 people in the audience, and there have been times that I had 0 people in the audience, but it was rare. And even now that Horizon is going away, the show is still at capacity almost every week.
So there's value in it.
Yes. And I even have a bunch of day oneers that have been there for 4 years in this show.
I love that.
And what they told me is that they can spend a good part of their day listening to junk and listening to arguments and toxicity. But this is coming like some people say it's like taking a bath. They come in there and they actually feel refreshed because they leave out with something they could use. So why do you think that the drama and the toxicity spreads as fast as it does in a community like this, where you're actually, this should be a place of growth and a place of fun and a place of entertainment, and you think you come in here and you're playing games, you're creating content, you're doing all these great things. Why does the negativity spread so fast? part of it is, I think, is human nature, and people. This is sad to say, but there are a lot of people who like to realize somebody's doing worse than them.
That's sad.
Yeah. And so if I hear drama or trauma or somebody's going through something, I may feel a little empathy, even a little sympathy, but it's more so, wow, how bad is it? I'm glad that's not me going through that. And people gravitate to other people's pain.
Mm.
Yeah.
I get that.
Mm-hmm. And it also helps people mask their own pain, because people who go looking for pain are usually in pain. And that's what I found professionally.
That part, I agree with that completely. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So let's shift gears just a little bit, still talking about your podcasts and stuff, but you actually incorporate some religious stuff into your work as well. And, how are you able to express your faith and without alienating the non-religious? I mean, I personally am not religious, spiritual, but not religious, but including everyone. How do you balance that? Or is it really just whoever wants that will come?
Well, that's part of it too. And that, people who are looking for it are going to find it. But I personally feel, of all the things that I do in here, that is by far the most important. I feel that, the things I did coming in here with the other programs I had, they were a building block to this. I think my ultimate purpose in here is to share God's message. I believe that we're in some perilous times, and I believe that the message that I bring on Sundays and on Wednesdays is vital for life and existence. I feel that strongly, that what I'm doing with the Horizon Discipleship Center is the capstone of everything that I do in here.
So this is growth for you personally as well as helping others.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you find that coaching in VR is very different than coaching in the real world?
Oh, definitely. Real world coaching, there's a different commitment because people pay for it, for one.
Okay.
And they already have a defined problem.
Okay.
And a defined goal, or they have an idea of a goal. So I find that my typical real world client is coming to solve a problem that they've run into. In a lot of them, it's been career related. I've had people, for example, who are been senior VPs in a company that were sent to me because they were struggling in their role dealing with people.
Okay.
And, here these people, they're pretty much at the top of the stack in their career, but their people skills are very suspect. So their HR would send them to me and says, okay, you need to work with this person, help them look at their behaviors. I would give them psychological assessments and help them understand their behaviors, and then help them build a roadmap to develop in that. So those tools I don't use in here because I don't know if anybody's going to pay that level in here for those tools. Plus, I feel that my coaching in here is different because it's kind of like one-offs. People will come, they'll be struggling with an issue. And because of the nature of it, I don't charge because I don't want that to be a barrier to somebody in here getting the help they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the anonymity in here helps people open up more, or do you think maybe it actually can cause some emotional distance?
I see both, but I see more people using the anonymity to really just kind of open up because they figure I'm never going to see this person. And if I leave out of here, I may never see them again. I can always unplug my headset. So people always have a way of escape in here. And I think that because of that, people sometimes get to be more vulnerable. But the big thing that I find is trust. Once people feel that they can trust you, they open up more. And I talk to people now who I met last year who now come and bring deeper issues because there's a trust, there's a consistency that's there. So I think it's a growth process where real world people will come in, they'll pay, they get what they need and leave. However, I do have a lot of repeat clients, and I have people who are no longer clients, but they stay in touch,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that, a lot of us have seen over the time that we've been here in the metaverse that there are a lot of introverts in here who get to come in here and either, feel safe in their avatar and secluded, or they come in and they get to be an alter ego of their IRL person where they get to actually come in here and express themselves, where in the real world they're not comfortable doing that. And,
yes.
Do you think that promoting mental wellness here within immersive environments is important, knowing that there's so many different personalities that you actually can't see their facial expressions? You don't get to see, they could be crying in the headset and you don't know, so is it important to kind of build up that positive, healthy mental attitude in here?
Yes. And that's one of the things that I find is very, very important, because when people come to me with an issue, I usually ask a series of questions to help them get a clear picture of what they're dealing with, because sometimes something is happening and it's like it's right in their face and they can't see beyond it. So as far as they're concerned, this is a devastating no-win situation. But sometimes through questioning, I get them to back away and kind of look at what's really going on. And once they do that, they realize that, hey, I was reacting. So now how do I become active, proactive, as opposed to reactive? Because many times when people come into a session, they're coming in reactive. So my goal is to send them out proactive.
I love that. It's a good mission. So are there any, just in general amongst our community? Because I know that most of the people in this community are trying to, build the community, whether it's within events or it's within spaces or just friendships. And sometimes even you become family in here. So, with that in mind, are there warning signs that community leaders in here should look for in their spaces? And, if they do see someone that, they think might need help, is it okay to say to them, hey, do you need to talk? Do you need someone? Or should they leave that, how do you address that?
Well, I try and hear what the motive is whenever somebody comes to me. And I've had some people come with ill motives. I've been stalked in here. So, it's that kind of thing. And I had to learn to see that, because in the beginning, I think I was a bit naive to a lot of things. And so, but that changed real quick, and I began to see where the motives are. So what I would say to anybody who's starting a community, clearly identify what you want to accomplish. What do you want to bring to the table? If you want to bring a place where people come and relax and just have casual conversation, be clear in that. So therefore, what your expectations are. I've observed people through the years that have built things in the metaverse, and their expectations are here. This is going to be the latest and greatest nightclub in the metaverse, and everybody's going to come here because it looks so pretty. Opening night happens, and then 3 weeks later, there's hardly nobody in there. So I always say, when you think about what you're going to do, think about sustainability. How are you going to sustain it? I've had people come to me and say, how is your show still going and still going strong? And I said, first of all, one of the things, I know my content. I know the value that I bring. And I don't depend on somebody to make the show. It's my responsibility to make the show. So I take ownership of it. So I would say, take ownership of what you're going to be doing and make sure you have the capacity to carry it through.
I agree with that completely. I mean, doing this show, doing the other work that we do here in the metaverse, we have a couple different productions, and I feel the same way. I plan it out methodically, and I sit there and I say, okay, what are we trying to achieve each season with a different theme and stuff like that? And I'm trying to bring people in that align with that, and making sure that you're, things happen, technological issues happen, but you need to be able to have, a game plan in advance. And that's the ultimate key to making everything flow. Because if you're haphazard and, we're going to do a show every Monday and then you're on one Monday off for three back at one, you lose your audience so fast. Consistency is very important. So, and I believe in that very strongly. So I do think that what you're saying is absolutely correct as far as sustainability and, and success.
Exactly.
So if you could give a piece, go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
So for example, when we started the church, I felt I struggled with it. Am I the person to do this? I struggled with it for a long time. And one of the things I began to do, I was beginning to pray. I said, well, I can do coach by myself because of how I manage. I said, but managing a church is a totally different thing, especially in the metaverse. And I said, I can't do it by myself. God gave me a team, a good team. And at the time, I didn't even have a build. I said, I don't even have a build. Next thing I know, I got a fabulous build. It was built for me. And so when we started out, it was just a few people. Now people can't get in because of the consistency of what we're doing and the purpose and the mission. And the mission was clearly laid out of what this place is supposed to be. So I think that's the key to survival in the metaverse or any kind of environment,
I agree with that. Are you planning on bringing over your worlds to other platforms when Horizon closes down with its doors on that? Okay. So maybe we'll see you over here in VR chat or maybe in some of the other platforms that are out there.
It's a very good possibility. I think with what has been built now with Coached and with the podcasts and with the church, I think the momentum is so strong that wherever I go, it's gonna flow with. I really feel that.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you're going strong and that your community is standing behind you. And I'm sure they will follow you because I think that community is something that people thrive and grow with. Even if, people who are quiet and not the front runners, they still like to belong. So I think that it's great that you've done this to help people. All the work that you've done in here, whether it's the coaching, your church, or whether it is just, doing, a little sit around get together. I've been to a couple of the groups that you had in the past. And I see the participation, but I also see everybody really just hanging on every word, listening to what's being said and feeling part of it. So that's great.
Yes.
So what is next for you? Do you have anything new besides what you've done here that you would like to try? Is there anything you want to put your hat in the ring for?
I'm open to what God is going to do. Did I pop up out of the seat or something here?
That's okay. It happens.
One of the things that we're doing this weekend, because of all the turmoil and trauma that's in the world, I see people just getting crazy with information. People are feeling bombarded, just overwhelmed. And so this weekend, Saturday evening at 6 p.m. and Sunday, we're doing a prayer retreat in Horizon World where we're gathering people to come and just pray for the nation, pray for the things that are going on in this world. Because I firmly believe in prayer that it's a difference maker. And so we just built a new world. It's a retreat cabin. It's a beautiful world that we will ultimately bring into the next location, either here or wherever else we go. But we did kind of like a little open house on yesterday, and people they loved what they saw in there. They just loved the build and everything. And so I think that'll be something that I'll bring over here too, or wherever I go. I haven't decided totally where I'm going, but I know I'm going somewhere.
Nice. I love it. So, I want to thank you for coming over and sharing your story with us and giving us a little bit of positivity. And anybody who's interested in maybe going to the group sessions, please, feel free to, reach out to MetaCoach. You can follow them on Instagram, try to hook up with them over in Horizon while it's still going on. And, I think that there'll be a little bit more time over there. So plenty of time to catch over one of your sessions over there as well.
Please do.
So thank you so much. And, I want to take a moment to just thank our sponsors real quick. I appreciate, you mentioned all the day ones that are still with you. And, I'd like to say that we have a bunch of day ones here. First and foremost, Blue Moon, who's been with me since the very first day one, when we were over in Altspace. And, I have people here in the audience, Kip and Marcus and Loudfire and Fuchsia, who've been around since the Altspace days. And then we picked up some people when we were in Spatial. We got Cybershay, we got G Deuce. And, then we come over here and we're in VR chat and we've got Ice Cold Stacks. We got Koan. We've got Relmarks. We've got people who've been coming here for quite a minute. But we also have our sponsors that help us keep this world updated, help us keep bringing people on for trainings. We have, I just mentioned Stacks. We got Stacks and Ty Sky from BYOB Events and from Ice House Casino and Lounge, who are helping people, build community through doing events, helping them with the marketing and, streaming things, teaching people how to, showcase what it is that they're doing. We got Fuchsia from the Virtual Fitness Group, who's bringing people together in VR so that they can work out, get fit, and have fun while they're doing it. We've got Rich from Hume AI, who's training people to learn how to market their worlds and their businesses here in the metaverse using AI. We've got Cybershay, who has been capitalizing on everything she's learned here in the metaverse. She wrote a book to try and help people. She's done some worlds for people. She's been part of the Block Collective. She's done a little bit of absolutely everything. Kip, who helped build this world for us and who has helped us with all types of, little updates and, strategizing on how to improve the worlds in here. Marcus, who made the incredible camera system that we do these videos from, that we can put them out on YouTube and share with everybody, and it's just been, we got Tink from Tinkerlove 1980 from Beauty of Tink, who is doing things both in the real world and here in the metaverse and kind of, crossing that bridge to help people that are in the community who need to both market their stuff and to help people who are in need. So, we are really fortunate to have a lot of amazing support in here, and I'm grateful for everyone who has been with us, and we hope you'll carry along with us. And next week, we are actually bringing on Sarah Tink and Roberta Pacino, who are going to come talk to us about some work they're doing here in the metaverse. And they're doing it not in VR chat, but they're doing it in multiverse, and they're doing it with in a couple of art communities. They're part of Women in the Metaverse. So they're going to come talk to us about all the things that they're doing. And that will be amazing to bring them on and get to check that out. So thank you, everyone, for coming here tonight on your Monday night. And we hope that we will see you next week. And we really appreciate you being here with us every week. So thank you all so much. Have a great week.
All righty. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I'll get off stage.